to me. They got no respect and no cold steel, just games on TV. I'll burn in hell before I sell my rights away from me. It's high time we embrace the tool that keeps all men free.
Well, Revolution Radio listeners, the sun is rising across this great United States, and that means that straight from the heart of Texas, it is time for Clayton Douglas, the Free American. Take it away, Clayton.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas. I'm joined today by Walt Myers, a freedom fighter from way back, goes way back, all the way to about 1996 when we first met, when I was working with Charles Collins running for president. Hello, Walt. How are you?
Well, I'm good this morning, Clayton. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I hope I did.
Correct you, however.
Beg your pardon?
I'll correct you, however. My time goes back before 96. I actually got involved in the 80s. I first became aware that this country had a real problem, and I took a 2.5-year sabbatical just to go back through history and try to find what created it. And that's where I picked up. And by 1993, I had joined a lot of organizations, Committee to Restore the Constitution and National Rifle Association, American, on and on and on. And every time I would, I'd ask someone for a plan to get us out of this mess. And no one had one. So having retired as Chief of Plans and Programs for a general staff, I decided I could probably still write a plan, and I threw one together and called a conference for Constitution Day 1993 in Kansas City. And that's when Governor Meekum and Senator Rogers and Judge Basil and Jim Thomas, who published Media Bypass magazine, and all up and showed up. And we tweaked the plan a little bit, and it called for a 7-member national implementation team to reach out a membership by only invitation, I might add, because we didn't want to be infiltrated. And so the purpose of that group was to reach out to other organizational leaders that were membership organizations and try to get them to work with one another to create a team that would have the political muscle to get something done. And we were somewhat successful. Governor Jay Brackenley of Utah had a group. He agreed to affiliate with us. Larry Pratt and others of America agreed to, and General Ray Davis, who was a former commandant of the Marine Corps and America's most decorated warrior, had a group of our veterans called About Face America. And so we were successful in creating a great leadership team, but we just couldn't get people to want to do anything, just like today. It's just nearly impossible, it seems, to pull people together as a team around the few actions that would be meaningful and through which you might peacefully regain control of the federal government. And I believe, or we believe, that that is something that is absolutely essential to do peacefully, fix the problem that we have in this country. But this is your show. Go for it. Now you've had my introduction.
Well, you know, you mentioned a lot of people I knew. I certainly knew Jim Thomas before he sold Media Bypass. I knew the people he sold it to, and we were both publishing. He was publishing Media Bypass. I was publishing The Free American. I succeeded in getting that on the newsstands in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all around the country for 10 years. And that's when we crossed paths. You also mentioned Larry Pratt. Larry Pratt will be a guest of mine this week. He's still in there fighting.
Good.
You mentioned veterans, and I'm certainly supporting veterans, as I've told people that oath that I took back in 1964 when I was 17 years old had no expiration date. I've also told people, Walt, that anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed yourself. And they go after the intelligentsia next. That's anyone that's smart enough to know what the hell they're trying to do. And third, they go after the veterans and law enforcement that may still be loyal to the old regime. In this case, oath keepers. And this is what I've been telling people for years. And the veterans, matter of fact, in my book, Mystery Babylon, which I just came out with, after they tried to kill me, I guess I'm sure I was a thorn in their side. I put building number 7 on the cover of my March 2004 issue. In April, the story broke in New York Times about them allowing the NSA to tap everybody's phones. Well, that NSA didn't bother to do that. They farmed it out to 2 Israeli companies, Amdocs and Converse. They tapped my phone and had somebody waiting for me. They knew the route I was taking, and I was, when the accident failed to kill me, they kept me drugged for 3 months. Maybe that's standard treatment for 3 broken ribs. I just don't think so. It's getting serious. It's even getting more serious now than it was back when Charles Collins was running for president. You featured him. You invited him to one of your meetings there. He spoke. Wonderful, wonderful man. Nothing that they could use against him. But he was trying to tell people we could buy back the Federal Reserve. And that interesting thing.
There is a provision in the act that allows that to happen. And the guy that can talk best about that is probably Byron Dale with Money Talk. And you should get him on your show someday if you haven't had him before.
I've met Byron. He sat in the same room, the same hotel room with me and Charles Collins and other activists of today. And the only problem is, and here's the problem with our voting system, you can only vote for people that you know about, and every time Charles Collins got up to speak at the Republican conventions from Maine to California, they turned his microphone off, and every cameraman on stage took a smoke break, pointed their cameras at the ground.
Well, the people in the Republican Party are not Republicans, and I wrote a letter to the editor some time ago, titled Republics and Rhinos, and I began it by saying that a republic, by definition, is a nation in which the supreme power rests on all the citizens entitled to vote and is exercised by representatives elected by them and responsible to them. Therefore, a Republican is a person who favors a Republican form of government. But when you look at what we have in this country, we know that we're no longer a republic. We become a nation state of global governance under the United Nations. And so these people are really anarchists, which is a person ignoring rules, duties, and orderly behavior. So a rhino, then, is a Republican in name only, an anarchist by demonstrated action or lack thereof. And I went on to say that the only rules for governing the United States are those that are set forth in the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and Bill of Rights. And today's facts show that we're not a federal government isn't a republic, but a subordinate ruler of the UN, meaning the U.S. is no longer the republic. And that states as principles to the Constitution hold the ultimate authority for its proper interpretation and implementation. and they have ignored their rightful power and duty and assumed the role of the subordinate rulers of the federal government. The Emergency Banking Act of 1933 made Congress irrelevant by giving the presidency the power to rule as a dictator. And so Obama, more so than any other previous president, is using this unconstitutional power to further dismantle lawful government and radically change our culture. The bottom line is that federal action has indeed exceeded the clear bounds of its jurisdiction under the Constitution, and thus violated rights guaranteed to the people, as 30 governors, Republican governors, I might add, alleged on November the 22nd of 1994. So the question is, well, how did this happen, and what do you do about it? And, I say it's happened due to a lack of knowledge, courage, and/or integrity. Elected and law enforcement people that fail to honor their oaths of office. You could go on and on with this sort of thing, but the problem that we have in this country, Clayton, is that we have simply failed to recognize the importance of and to comply with the intent of James 4:17, which says that he that knoweth to do right and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And that applies to all of us, but especially to our political class. People just don't do what is right. And so we've got a real problem on our hands. And if you're going to solve it, you're going to have to agree to some certain basic fundamentals regarding government, and then come together as a team of people to push for changes in 3 items. Number one, if you look at the boxes, if you will, that we have available to fix our problem with, we have a soapbox and a mailbox and all of their forms with which to try to educate and inspire people, and especially politicians, to do what is right. You then have, in theory, a jury box authorized by Article 5 of the Bill of Rights, called the common law grand jury, in which people can sit down, examine evidence if they feel that they have been done wrong, and this includes by politicians. They could then issue an indictment or a presentment, turn that over to a trial jury, and if they indeed find that the evidence supports the allegation, then they can decide what to do with the person that's responsible for taking the action. We no longer have access to that common law grand jury. It was stolen from us in 1946 with the changes in the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. This is just one of many, many federal actions that have exceeded the clear bounds of its jurisdiction under the Constitution, if you will. So forget solving the problem by the jury box unless we regain the integrity of it. The next box is the ballot box. And if anyone thinks that they can solve it through the ballot box, they're smoking something, because the media is so controlled and the money is issued to those people that are running for office that would indeed follow their desires, if you will. And so, and between that and just the corruption with the voting process itself and voting machines, you're not going to solve this problem with that box unless, again, the integrity of it is restored. So what does that leave you with? It leaves you with a soapbox and a mailbox and all of their forms to try to educate and inspire people to use the cartridge box, because that's the only remaining box. So if you're going to take this country back peacefully, we've got a real chore on our hands, and we'll talk about it.
I have
You still there?
Yes, sir. I have been trying to solve this. I started the Free American after what I witnessed at Waco, and the murder of almost 100 men, women, and children by our government. They tried to demonize them. They tried to say they were pedophiles. They tried to accuse David Koresh of being a pedophile. and use that as an excuse to kill 17 little children. We had to do that to save them from a pedophile ring. And that never happened. That was the real reason, and I've got that up, the importance of Waco, up on my website now. They had come across and stumbled across the same information that I did a few years prior to Waco. And that was George Bush as CIA director, a little smuggling operation from Colombia through his partner in Panama, Manuel Noriega. They brought 100 plane loads of cocaine in after Special Forces built the watchtowers. And that's the first time I got threatened by the CIA. Don't do that. We're going to let you live this time, Clay. Just don't do anything like that again. What I did was start the Free American magazine. And again, it was because the press had tried to demonize these people. This was a church that had been established for 50 years, and a Christian church. And they wiped them out. Why? Because they knew they had hacked into some of their drug dealing operation. They had one of the drug airports next door to them. And of course, the most famous drug importation center was protected by Governor Bill Clinton in a little place called Mena, Arkansas. Now, to stumble upon all of that and have the nerve to publicize it, it's resulted in me being demonized ever since. This, the American people knew of
that, and I have been to Waco.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I'm aware of those things, and I have been down to Waco. I cry every time I go in there and see the trees that were planted in honor of those children, one for each of them, and helped to rewire the new church that was put up there. But I personally think it's counterproductive to get off into too many of those issues. They are all fit the category of actions that have exceeded the clear bounds of its jurisdiction of the Constitution, if you will, in the federal government, turning their head, not watching for things like that. And I think that if we're to build the team that we have to build, we're going to have to have a very clear position paper that says this is where we're coming from, and these are the reasons we believe that this country has a problem. And I have written one which starts out by saying that whereas the purposes of the Constitution for the United States, and keep in mind there are two constitutions, one for and one of the United States, the of being the incorporated government that we have. But the Constitution for the United States, the original, the purpose of it was to ensure domestic tranquility, provide common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, and to secure people's unalienable rights to life, liberty, and opportunity to pursue happiness. And whereas to be lawful, government must operate in accordance with the principles and policies set forth in this Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when interpreted in the spirit of providing Americans their inalienable rights. And it goes on to say that any action that has been taken by any government that in any way infringes upon or lessens the ability of us to enjoy the rights to life, to liberty, and an opportunity to pursue happiness is an unlawful act. And, of course, if they're unlawful, then those who are responsible for having taken those actions and perpetuating those actions are criminals. And that's what we have today is a criminal government. So the question becomes one of how are you going to regain control of the federal government so that these needed changes could be made and the republic restored? And if we're to do that, it is going to take a tremendous amount of political muscle, that is to say, of people who are united around a common cause of getting our states to pass legislation that will restore the integrity of the jury box, the ballot box, and or to nullify the 17th Amendment, which is a fraud on its face and continues to be. It was fraud the day it was introduced by House Joint Resolution in the 62nd Congress. Those are the only three things that we can do to peacefully regain control of that government. Now, you'll find that our states were created by we the people. And they in turn created the Constitution, the first of the articles of which created the three branches of the federal government as an agent of the state, responsible for very carefully delineated items, about 17 of them, that are specifically spelled out in the Constitution. Of course, the federal government has taken the position, well, the General Welfare Clause and some other clauses has given it carte blanche authority to do anything it wants, which is silly. If you look at the 10th Amendment, anything not delineated in the Constitution is reserved to the states people. And so the whole thing is one of, we've just got a criminal government on our hands, and if you're going to get it back again, we need to restore the integrity of the ballot box and the jury box. To that end, I wrote to do that back in the mid-90s. Senator Rogers was in the legislature in California. He ran them through legislative council, cleaned up to be ready to go. Copies of them are in my book. They're also on the website, www.thecnc.org, under recent articles. So if anybody that wants to look at them, can go to the website and pick them up and take a look. Again, that is thecnc.org. So
I've got that up.
That's what we have to do.
I've got that up and linked to the Constitutional Networking Center. Help Take America Back. You can register there. It's linked right below your name on the on my website, and I certainly wish you success in that. You've been doing this a long time, and frankly, I'm a little discouraged. I had, I helped start the militias around the country with my magazine, and of course, I got attacked and demonized. They just don't tell you. I did it pretty much the same way you're doing things, by sitting down with the governor of New Mexico in his office to talk about it. We were not a terrorist group. We do have a terrorist group in America. It's called the BATF. It's called the FBI. And they are working for the bankers against the American people. I've read the Homeland Security Assessment Report. I mean, after they've got the fusion centers and Homeland Security's bought 1 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. They can't use that in warfare, not supposed to use that in warfare. But then again, they're also not supposed to use weapons of mass destruction like uranium bullets, depleted uranium ammunition that kills the soldiers. I said in Vietnam, Walt, they sprayed us with Agent Orange because they didn't want combat hardened soldiers coming back to America and seeing what kind of communist cesspool our government had become. We've got every plank on the Communist Manifesto intact in America, and when McCarthy tried to tell us about that, warn us about that, he was demonized. They made McCarthyism a bad word, and because some of Roosevelt's best friends were communists, Matter of fact, one of them was Uncle Joe Stalin. And this is before I was born. I mean, we were allied with the communists against my ancestor, the German people. And it's not, I pointed out that Benjamin Friedman, who happened to be Jewish, and Aaron Russo, who happened to be Jewish, they tried to tell us what the Federal Reserve was, what this banking system was, and who was responsible for starting these wars. What's that?
I sure wish Aaron were still with us.
Well, we lost more than just Aaron Russo. We also lost the Jews for Preservation of Firearm Ownership, and another Aaron and I've got his videos up. The ADL Southern Poverty Law, they listed me when I started the militias as armed and dangerous. When I was working with Charles Collins, they put Charles and I in false patriots, their little fundraising brochures. They got to have an enemy, so they tried to make us into the enemy. They tried to make militias a bad word. I mean, what part of the Second Amendment don't you understand, people? There is an attack on our, and Aaron, the gun owners, Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership, they just put out a wonderful, I believe it's a 4-segment video about the 100 million innocent people that have been murdered, sacrificed in the to achieve gun control in the Soviet Union, in Rwanda, in Zimbabwe. I mean, it stretches in Germany, in Russia. 60 million people were sacrificed by the communists. Now, many of the communists were Jewish, but you got Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership that are telling you. And by the way, if you're Jewish and you are not in favor of the Second Amendment, in other words, if your name is Barbara Boxer or Dianne Feinstein, and you want to disarm the American people, they are trying to set us up to add another 100 million Americans to this list of victims of gun control. I think that's why you mentioned the cartridge box. Right now, Department of Homeland Security has all the cartridges. They've bought up all the ammo in America. They've got 1 billion rounds of hollow point ammo. What do they need that for? They're supposed to be protecting our homeland. And there's just been bills been put in Congress. As a matter of fact, I played, and I think I've got on Facebook, the statement of a congressman that, it's hard to tell exactly what he was talking about because half of it was classified. And I don't know whether he's talking about invasion from outer space or what the enemy, or if the enemy, and I suspect the enemy is exactly what I filmed in the first Homeland Security meeting. Colonel John Brinkerhoff was lecturing law enforcement, said we're in for a long war. This war is going to be fought on American soil, and the enemy's weak. The enemy doesn't have helicopters and tanks and planes, so he's going to use unconventional methods. The enemy he was talking about is us, the American people, that want to retain our Constitution. They've tried to make constitutionalists into terrorists. That's what the fusion centers are about to take over law enforcement, put federal control on law enforcement. It's just, everything we predicted 20 years ago, Walt, is happening now. And we saw it in Boston. We had another false flag operation. 9/11 was a false flag operation. It was set up by Zionists or communists, whatever you want to call them. Whatever you want to call them. They've got a lot of different names, and they hide behind the Jewish people. And people like Aaron Russo, Benjamin Friedman, they stand out because they happen to be Jewish and they're telling you the truth. They want to get us all, according to Aaron Russo, who talked.
It's not.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't think you should, give a broad brush picture of the fact that this, the allegation that this is a Jewish movement. It is not. It is Zionist.
Zionist, yes, sir.
That is behind it. And there's a big difference between the two of them.
They hide
I don't
behind
even like to get off on those tangents.
They hide behind the Jewish people. They use them and they will sacrifice them in a heartbeat.
That's
sir.
true. They do. They do, but it's not them. But I don't like to get off on those. I like to stick with pretty close to the line that I think has to be followed if you're going to fix the problem. And that is that we who are concerned about the future of this country must come together as a team. The team that I think we must create is described in a paper on the CONSTITUTIONALIST'S website titled Reliving 1776. Basically what that team consists of is a group of people at the national level whose mission is to keep people on the straight and narrow on these issues through which we can gain control of the federal government. That group must then reach out to the leadership of other organizations and somehow convince them of the need for unity to get the three documents or bills passed that would help to fix the problem. Again, the bill dealing with jury box integrity, ballot box integrity, and nullification of the 17th Amendment, which would then bring the United States senators back under the control of the state legislatures, which the Constitution required that they be.
All right.
So that 17th Amendment is simply a none of federal action exceeding clear bound to its jurisdiction. If we're going to build that team, and then
a bill passed last night.
If you're going to build the team, Clayton.
Well, I'm all for that. I'm all for that, Walt. But a bill passed last night. I guess it's been a few nights ago. 93-7, that declares the entire United States of America a battleground. Just what I told you in the Truth-Based Agreement. What that means is that the U.S. military can now operate with impunity and grant the U.S. military the unchecked power to arrest, detain, interrogate, and even assassinate United States citizens with impunity. If you want to see what it looks like, all you got to do is look at Boston. This is what I've got pictures of.
I don't care that.
Go ahead.
These are symptoms of our problem. They are not the problem. And you can't solve the problem by symptoms. And there's nothing that the powers that be love more than to have the United States people, the American people, chasing their tail and trying to cure symptoms. It just can't be done. You can look at 1,000 different ones, and they've got groups of people that are on all of them. Abortion. Boy, everybody wants to get behind that. And so you've got groups that try to attack that thing. The monetary policy problem. There's lots of people who focus on that. Well, these are all symptoms, and you can't solve symptoms. You can only solve problems. And the problem is that we have people who are hypocrites. They take an oath of office. They pay no attention to it. And we have got to convince them that we have the political muscle to recall them in short order if they don't toe the line. And that's going to require a team. And that team we've described. Now, the importance of that team can't be overestimated, oversighted. That down at the grassroots level, and I'm talking zip code level, you need a group of people who are responsible for reaching out to the clergy and convincing them to change their ways, because over 99.7% of our so-called churches are not churches at all. They're incorporated businesses who have accepted a Secretary of State to be their creator And a created can't be greater than a creator. Therefore, the state is the God to these churches, all in violation of the first commandment. So that has to be changed. We need to have a group that reaches out to the veterans and helps to educate and inspire them, and to get those who are veterans and who know families that have people in the military to explain to those folks that are now in the military on active duty that, hey, you took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, or at least that's the oath I took when I went in, and I think it's still there, and that you need to do that and not to support this communist government we have that is using our military forces simply to expand their power and control over the rest of the world. That's what we were used for. Where in my book I wrote that we were used and abused. And we indeed were, as I see it today. And so that's just something that has to be done. Another group at the local level has to deal with law enforcement people and to educate and inspire them to do what is right. Because when the shooting starts, and I think it will, we need to have them on our side, not shooting at us, but with us. When I say us, I mean the true Americans who believe in lawfully constituted government. And so that team has to be created. And if you're going to create that team, I maintain that you have to begin with having a group of basic understanding, fundamentals, principles, call them what you want. But one must stand for something to avoid falling for anything. And that being the case, we need to adopt a group of facts as the foundation for our position on items, and we need to adopt a common goal. And I think that the Republican governor cited an adequate goal back in 1994 when they said that they wanted to restore to the states and the people the prerogatives and freedoms guaranteed them under the Constitution. So we use that as a satisfactory goal, and we go down through and we adopt this fundamental position. And I'm going to read a few of them. The Declaration of Independence is America's birth certificate and the Constitution's cornerstone. To be lawful, government must comply with the principles and procedures set forth in these documents and the Bill of Rights, and any executive order, Supreme Court decision, treaty, presidential decision, directive, constitutional amendment, or other act of Congress must be directed in advancing the cause of life, liberty, and an opportunity to pursue happiness in order to be lawful. Secondly, states created the Constitution, which created the federal government as their agent. As principles to the Constitution and under the law of agency, states possess the ultimate authority and responsibility for its proper interpretation and implementation, and has a fiduciary obligation to do so. Thirdly, that in consideration of the power granted to the federal government by the states, each state is guaranteed a republican form of government and is to be protected from invasion. Fifthly, a treaty, a presidential responsibility with the advice and consent of the Senate, cannot lawfully create law, as Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution vested all legislative powers in the Congress, and the House of Representatives has no authority over treaties. Next one, that the Constitution's 10th Amendment, stating the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states respectively or to the people, provides incontestable evidence that the only lawful powers of the federal government are those enumerated in the Constitution. The next one, that the Supreme Court was correct in saying, quote, this court has regularly uniformly recognized the supremacy of the Constitution over a treaty, and it would be manifestly contrary to the objectives of those who created the Constitution, let alone alien to our constitutional history and tradition, to construe Article 6 as permitting the United States to exercise power under an international agreement without observing constitutional prohibitions. This was in close quote. This was in Reed versus Cohen. Next one, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void. And so we can go on down through things that we are basic, they're truths, and we have to rally around them as being the foundation upon which we rest our position on the issues that we find have violated the federal powers or authority, if you will. And I have a list of what those are in our minds anyway. But then once you have done that and you get people to agree to it, you say, well, okay, how do we pull these people together? And this is where I believe we into our Achilles heel. We don't have a communication system available to the American people through which they can locate and communicate with one another down at the local level. And we have such a system. It's essential. It is the stumbling block that has prevented people from being able to come together. And so a while back, I contracted with a man to develop that system. I sent him $1,000 as a retainer to get started on it, only to find that he didn't agree with what we agreed, or he didn't develop what we had agreed to. And the system that I see a need for, Clayton, would allow a person to hover their cursor over a state, find the number of registrants in that state, click on it, and get a drop-down list of the counties in that state. Again, find the number of people registered in that county. Click on the county and get a drop-down of the zip codes. And find the number of registrants there and who they are that are in that zip code area. And then to be able to email one another and all of the people in there simultaneously or on a geopolitical basis. And for a national team then to be able to communicate with all of these registrants simultaneously or again on a geopolitical basis. We have to have such a system. Well, the guy came back with nothing more than another chat room. And I said, that's not what we wanted. And so I agreed to let him $500 of the retainer just to get out from under the contract. And we're back to square one. Right now, I'm working with in Austin, Texas, and I would like to put you in touch with him. Actually, New Braunfels is where he's from, San Antonio and Austin. And see if, first of all, you might want to get him on your radio show.
Love to do that.
Matt Purdue.
Matt Purdue?
Do you know Matt?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you know him.
Send me an email on that.
Okay, I can send you the contact.
Yeah.
Did that and give you his contact information? But it's going to take some money to kick this thing off. And I have spent over $100,000 out of my own pocket, and I've about broke myself up. In the interest of the family, I don't dare delve into that sort of thing again. But somewhere we need to locate some funds. Now, my idea on it is that if you're going to fix this problem, we need at least 2 million people across the country to team up as part of the local Take America Back team that are described in that Reliving 1776 document. If we had 2 million people that would be behind it, who could and would contribute an average of 25 cents per week. That would give the movement $500,000 each with which to try to get something done. And that is a substantial amount of money. You could do an awful lot with that. We could do advertising, if you will, as well as a lot of other things. But those people tied together, we have to have this communication system. And that's the first order of business. Now, I've got a few people that are willing to give in 100, 200, 500 to get this thing developed and underway, but we're still lacking a whole lot of them. So if you know of anybody out there that has got some bucks, I'd sure like to chat with them.
Well,
and we also need to rebuild the national leadership team because we're down to Senator Rogers, Dr. Greg Dixon, myself, that the rest of the people have passed on, and that national leadership team is desperately needed. And this is why I'd like to talk to Governor Gary Johnson to find if he has an interest. Money-wise, I've tried to reach people like Steve Wynn. I went up to his casino and got as far as it was at. Left him a copy of my book, which describes how we can get out of this mess as well as how we got into it. But these people who have money don't seem to have an interest. They don't know that we have a problem and that there's only 13 families, literally, that own the world. And you can't buy it back because we don't have any money.
Yeah, if you print your very own money, as Carl Fleming said, if you got your own printing press, you print your own money, then pretty soon you can buy up the whole neighborhood. Our founding fathers warned us, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we've conquered. You know, when they fail to kill me. What's that?
That's where we are today.
Yes, sir. Yes, Monsanto.
Those banks and corporations sprung up and they own us, and we can't buy it back. But that's simply another of the federal actions that have exceeded the very boundaries of jurisdiction under the Constitution. Another symptom of our problem, if you will. And I love Byron Dale. He's one of the best friends I have, and I have utmost respect for the man. But he too only wants to talk about that particular issue and not how it is that we can gain control of the federal government. I had a conversation with him over the weekend, and I just told him the same thing I just told you. Byron, I love you. You're one of the greatest guys I know. Your heart's in the right place, but your head's screwed on wrong. You keep wanting to just talk about a symptom of the problem, and you can't solve symptoms. We have to gain control of the federal government, which is the problem. You know, that's not the problem. The problem's still back to being a spiritual battle and the James 4:17. There is our real problem. But a manifestation of it is a federal government which is totally out of control.
It's
hello.
Yes, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. You know, they have actually been attacking us for years. Ayn Rand had it correct in Atlas Shrugged. She said if you ever allow the government has no control over honest citizens, so we have to make criminals out of them. What they did back in the 30s, after the banks...
We don't have to make criminals out of them. They are criminals.
I'm talking about us. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about the American people. They're doing the same thing to us they did to the Chinese when they killed a few 100 million Chinese. They are, and it's what I covered in my book. You've got the CIA and the Mossad bringing in the drugs into this country. They are the drug gangs that the BATF are. And when they made our number one cash crop, $1 billion crop in the 30s, when they made that illegal, they made criminals out of 50 million Americans who probably can't own guns right now. So it's the oldest maxim in warfare is divide and conquer. That is what's happened here. You're a Republican? Well, I'm a Democrat. You're a conservative? Well, I'm a liberal. You know, this is divide and conquer. You've got these same people working on both sides. I've referred to the Republicans and Democrats as two wings to the same bird. And that bird is a global vulture. It sure ain't an eagle. We've had the same thing with oil. One of the people in my chat room was just talking about hemp and hydrogen in 2016. that would solve our problems. And I've got the information about hemp and the attack on hemp, the attack on our farmers. That was the number one cash crop in America. They made it illegal to. That was the attack on our farmers, which is the first people that they attacked. They did that in the Ukraine. They did it in the and the rest of Russia. They did it in South Africa. They did it in Rhodesia. And I think we got to abolish these laws against victimless crimes in order to restore the people. I mean, free trade would be tear down that wall between the border and let the Mexicans, let the Colombians bring all their drugs up here, pay a duty on it, and let Americans buy it, take it out of their hands, quit making them criminals. It's we're talking about the shadow government. Not really a shadow government, because the person that was responsible for Operation Watchtower, bringing the drugs into this country, was George Bush, same guy that was involved with standing outside of the school book depository when Kennedy was killed for issuing United States notes. I mean, we've had people, presidents even, that have tried to do the right thing, that have tried to tell you about the Kennedy's speech, told you about the conspiracy, told you what was happening here, told you that they controlled the military, that they were going to, even Eisenhower, who killed so many Germans, warned you about the military-industrial complex. So our founding fathers and responsible presidents from Lincoln to Kennedy have tried to do something about that, and they've been murdered. They've been murdered, and so the criminals are still in power, and we're not going to get them out with a voting box because the Rothschild bought Reuters News back in the late 1800s. So they control all the news that you get. That's why I started the Free American. And what they've done to me, when they failed to kill me, and I am kind of hard to kill, what they did is destroyed us economically. I can't operate the way I did because I had one of my magazines sold, Walt, for $500,000, and I still retain 50% of it. That means that magazine was worth $1 million, and it was being distributed nationally, and suddenly I didn't have it anymore because they tried to kill me. If you'll stay with me, Walt, we've got 5-minute break here, and we'll be back. I'll love to continue this conversation if you can hang out. We'll be right back.